The K2 is a large diaphragm condenser microphone that is vacuum tube operated. What does this mean? This means all the amplification that takes place before it hits the preamp is vacuum tube, meaning we're getting a really warm, lush sound. Some of its features include variable polar patterns. This means we can get an omnipolar pattern for the whole room, cardioid, which is just direct facing, and figure of 8, which is front and rear, but not the sides. This is done by using the variable pot on the power supply. The K2 uses the HF1 1-inch large diaphragm capsule, which means small transients and large transients both get picked up beautifully. Using the K2 as drum overheads, we're using one for left and one for right. The reason being is that we're going to get a nice overall sound of the room with vacuum tube amplification. Now we're using this currently in cardioid mode, but the K2 can also work in omni and figure of 8. So if you even want to do a blumline technique on your drum overheads, you can do it with the K2. We can move the K2s further back in cardioid mode to still get that room sound, but predominantly from the front of the microphone. You can also use the K2 as a mono overhead microphone. Utilising it in cardioid polar pattern allows us to get a lot of that direct sound from on top of the drummer's seat. This is especially good for getting a tight drum sound that sits in the centre of our mix. Let's listen to the K2s as close overheads. As you can hear, the K2s pick up a full frequency range. They also get a fair amount of the room's acoustics. Now, as we know, most engineers would remove some of that low-end rumble to ensure that we get an accurate description of the mid and high end of both the drum kit and the room. The K2's diaphragm and its high dBSPL rating make it really cool for snare, and that's one of the main instruments on the kit that I like to use it on. Placing the K2 up close to the snare gives us a very big sound, while moving it further away gives us an overall tone. With the K2 on the snare, we can have it sitting straight up, getting all the sound elevating from the drum and also elevating out. Or we can actually have it on a tilt, where we have the diaphragm pointing down towards the skin. This accentuates the proximity effect, which basically means we get a lot more low frequencies in the sound. We can now hear the K2 on the snare. As you can tell, it's got a great low, mid and high frequency response. The attack transient comes through really well. It really doesn't need much compression at all. A lot of people tend to like the raw state of the K2 on snare drum. I also like to use the K2 on kick drum. Being a large diaphragm condenser, you do tend to worry a little bit on excessive sound sources. However, the K2 can more than adequately handle a kick drum. Whether I've got it inside the kick getting a very attack sound or outside the kick getting an overall tone. The K2 has a high dBSPL rating, which means it can handle all the loud and soft changes in the instrument. The cool thing about the K2 is because it is a large diaphragm condenser microphone and it's got a vacuum tube inside it, we get a really warm kick drum sound while still maintaining the attack, decay, sustain and release of the true sound envelope. As you can hear at the moment, we've got the full drum mix going. Let's solo the kick and hear the properties of the K2. As you can hear with the K2 on the kick drum, we get a lot of that low frequency. That is especially due to having the kick mic so close to the kick skin. We emphasise the low frequency effect and make sure that we get all that nice low end rumble that we need for the kick. You can also hear that the kick's got a lot of mid and high frequency content available. Using any kind of equaliser, be it a board equaliser or even a plug-in, we can scoop out those mids, emphasise those highs and get a very clicky, punchy kick drum sound. Or we can leave the mids in there and get a very warm overall tone. We can now hear the K2 on kick, snare and overheads. As you can tell, it's a very versatile microphone for drums. Let's put these sounds into the rest of the mix and see how the K2 shines.
to the left and he leans to